All right, today I'm going to try and talk about really inexpensive ways for beginning carvers to get what they need to sharpen their tools. I did a little video about what tools to buy to begin carving and keep the budget without breaking the bank. Pretty soon or quickly you will find out that once you start to carve, of course your tools get dull. I had someone tell me one time that for every hour you carve, you should spend an hour sharpening. And sharpening in and of itself is an art. You're going to talk to 10 different guys, you're going to get 10 different opinions, and they're probably all good and work well. What works best for you will be something you develop over a period of years. I've done a lot of different things for sharpening. And yes, when I started sharpening, I dulled a lot of tools until I got it down. So you're probably going to do the same thing. There's a little bit of an apprenticeship to serve in almost anything you do. But just briefly, and I should probably do later on a real sharpening lesson just about sharpening. Right now the goal is to teach you about things that you can buy or get or acquire, because they don't all cost money, and begin to sharpen your tools. But for things like your knife, a knife edge is tapered on two sides. You should know that. A chisel or a plane, it's tapered or beveled on just one side, and the back should be perfectly flat. And I'll explain that a little bit later on. Your carving gouges, you'll have a bevel on the back, and I have it exaggerated here, just a very slight bevel to the inside. For your plane and chisel edge, the reason that it's important to have that back flat is for things like when you're cutting a hinge gain. When you want to come in flat, if you have a bevel on the back, the cutting edge is way up here, and you won't be able to pass along and cut in. So your plane and chisels particularly, bench chisels, firmer chisels, mortise chisels, perfectly flat on the back with no bevel or taper on the front. Now, the ideal angle to sharpen at. Sharpening becomes a compromise between what's going to cut easiest or smoothest and what's going to hold the edge really well. 25 degrees seems to be pretty much accepted for general purpose. That's going to hold a good edge. And why is that important? 25 degrees keeps a fair amount of steel behind the cutting edge to hold the cutting edge. If you lower that angle, go down to 20, it'll cut better. It'll pass through the grain of the wood better because it's a thinner edge, but it won't support the edge as well with the steel in the back. If you have tools that you use for much rougher work, maybe mortise work for timber framing and things, mortise and tenon work, you might want to raise that angle to 30 so that there's more steel supporting the edge. But 25-degree angle seems to be pretty much accepted. And if you're not sure what that is, you can get out your protractor and take a piece of cardboard or maybe a piece of sheet metal, even a piece of paper. Draw it and cut it out, and then you can test and try your angles against that. The other thing about the cutting edge, you want it to be nice and flat. If not flat, a little bit concave, so that the front edge and the heel, the cutting edge and the heel of the bevel can touch on the work. If it's concave, if you reshape a tool because it's got damaged, the grinder will make it concave. And that's okay. It's not going to support the edge as well, But then every time you sharpen, you're not doing the whole surface. You're not having to remove metal from the whole surface. You touch the front and the back, and eventually that'll get straight. Convex or crowned like this is absolutely no good. That's really bad. And the reason for that, once again, when it's flat, it will pass in and you're at a good angle to move along smoothly. The concave will do the same thing. You can push along smoothly. But if you get that round, you have to turn your cutting tool up higher and higher to where it won't want to push, it'll just want to go down. So the round is no good. If you have a round, you need to reshape your tool and start over. For the most part, my carving tools don't see a grinder very often. I take really good care of them as much as I can. Of course, I do drop one once in a while on the concrete floor, and they never drop on the handle. They always drop on the blade. And then they have to be reshaped. So, if you're going to purchase a power tool, although you don't need to, but you can get grinders like this at sales and lots of places rather inexpensively. But sometimes a tool does need to be reshaped. The danger with these grinders is they build heat in the steel so quickly that it's easy to burn the edge, and then you lose the temper in the tool. Here's a tool that I looked at the other day that needed to be reshaped. So, keep some water with you. What I do is I start high and go down until I feel that I'm on that bevel. You can buy lots of jigs and templates and other things that'll reproduce that angle over and over again quickly so that you don't get multiple bevels. And here I'm kind of chasing this grinder. I just put it on my bench. It's not fastened down. But once you start to see sparks coming over the top of the edge, you know you've gotten to the edge and you need to keep really, really light pressure on it. And keep it cool. Keep cooling it all the time. So generally that's the high-speed grinder. They do make them in different RPM ranges. Some come with much lower speed. A much lower speed would be better. But in addition to using it for sharpening your tools, a grinder has many other uses around the shop and the home. You might want to sharpen your lawnmower blade or something else. But an inexpensive grinder, you can get these for like 20 bucks, 25 bucks. They might not be the highest quality, but they're not terribly expensive. All right, I want to let this slow down and move it out of the road. And talk about the next thing. Once you come off the grinder, you're not finished. And it's surprising how many people think they can get a really nice sharp edge on their chisels, plane irons, and other things by using a grinder. And it doesn't work. If you feel up the edge, and this is the way you should feel to see if things are sharp. Feel up the edge. You can feel that it rolled over a burr, like a wire burr. The steel rolled over. I don't know if you can hear it. But that catches on there. And as long as that wire burr is there, the tool isn't sharp. And you can't get a tool without a wire burr off a grinder like that. Grinder is only for reshaping, repairing damaged tools, and things like that. So that means you're going to want to go on to stones. There's a myriad of stones. There's oil stones, there's water stones, now there's diamond stones, there's ceramic stones, there's all kinds of things. But one of the cheapest, most inexpensive things is a piece of plate glass. I got this at a store we were working on. They were throwing out some glass shelving. I took a piece and brought it home, and I've been using it for years. So it was no cost to me. But I think you could probably go to your glass supplier and see if they don't have a piece of broken plate glass or a piece of boilerplate, inexpensive. The next thing would be then to stop at your auto body supply place and get some wet dry sandpaper. It comes in all grits, and grit is the coarse surface, the minerals that they put on the paper or cloth backed, but it's an abrasive. All your sharpening stones are some sort of abrasive. There's 220, 400, 1,000. There's 800 too. I guess I don't have any. 1,200, 1,500, and you can get 2,000. I don't know if you need to go quite that high with most of your work, but anyway. Now to tune these tools up, I'm going to start with like the 220 grit. And you can use one of two materials. I'm going to put just water on it, but if you feel like you need to, you could use oil as well. And I'm going to do the same thing that I kind of did with the grinder. I'm going to put the tool flat and turn it up until I feel that I'm on the bevel, and then I'm just going to go back and forth. Use the whole piece of sandpaper. If I feel it now, I can feel there's a wire burr there. I'm rolling the steel that way. Roll it over. And feel up the edge. And I didn't quite roll over there yet. But that's in essence what you're going to be doing. You're going to roll that wire burr back and forth with finer and finer grit papers until it snaps off. You're not going to see it snap off. Now I have the wire burr that way. So I can keep going back and forth and back and forth. Once I get it to shape that it's out to the edge on the 220, it really progresses pretty fast through the other grits. And it is better to work progressively. I should not be skipping from 400 to 1,000, but that's what I have here. The same thing when you sand a project. A lot of people sand a project with 80 grit and they want to get it fine and they skip up to 150 or 180. You should work progressively. 80 grit, 100 grit, 120 grit, then 150 or 180. But this will work nicely for all of your tools. And you can quickly get an edge that will shave hair. That was not a lot of work. And it's not a lot of work to keep your tools in shape. So mostly I use my stones to keep my tools in shape. And I could go finer and finer, but I don't want the video to drag on. I think you get the idea. So a piece of plate glass and wet dry paper. It's not the expense of a $90 or $100 two-sided diamond stone with a holding attachment. A free piece of glass. Some paper from your auto parts store, and you're all set. The other thing you're going to find with your, that you can use this plate glass for, at some point in time as you build your collection, you'll get stones. And as you sharpen on your stones, you're going to make a hollow spot. And you want to true it up. This is a great way to true it up. A piece of wet dry paper on a piece of plate glass or boiler plate, and just work your stone back and forth to get it back to flat again. And you'll see pretty quickly where it's cutting and where it isn't by the slurry that it gets on it. And keeping your stone trued up once you have that is an important thing. And this one's not so bad, so I think we're going to stop with that. Now you have your tools sharp and you're cutting, but you're working on a project and it starts to push a little harder, a little more difficult. The chips aren't coming out as cleanly. You're getting a little ragged. Here's a really simple thing. It's just a piece of leather on a board that I cut out. Actually, one of my students turned me on to the idea. He made his out of a paint stir stick. And at Joann Fabrics, for a couple bucks, they had a whole bunch of leather scraps. And I mean a couple bucks, like $5. I got all this, and I made a bunch of strops from it already. And it's simple to keep your tools tuned up on a strop. Now, what will happen eventually with the strop is you'll make that convex shape because of the way it rolls. But all you need is some polishing compound, and it can be almost any kind of polishing compound. I got this at a local hardware store. It's in a stick, and just charge the leather pad. And now for stropping, you're just going to pull away. Really inexpensive, really neat way to keep your tools tuned up. Whether it's your knives or your gouges. And this all comes in different grits too. This is a really fine grit, and it cuts really nice, and it keeps your tools nice and sharp. So for a few bucks there, you get something that works well. Everybody seems to be about power tools. They want to sharpen with power tools. And there are some pretty cool sharpening systems out there. The Tormac is one. If you have an extra $500 before attachments, and I think Grizzly has a clone of that, and I think Jet has a clone of that as well, might be a nice tool to have. I don't have one. I don't think I need it. Here's a piece of flake board that I had laying around the shop from some project. You can't see it very well anymore, but this is a piece of leather on the back. It could be on the front. and just a bolt that I had laying around. Cut it in a circle with my jigsaw, drilled a hole in the center, put the bolt through, chuck it up in my drill. Put it in the vise. And I don't have a lock on my drill motor, so I just put a clamp on it. Little bit of jeweler's rouge, polishing compound. Could be automotive polishing compound. And in a reversing drill, you can run it the other direction as well. If you're doing a knife, it might be good to run both directions. Again, I'm not going to get too carried away on that. This isn't necessarily a video about sharpening. It's about finding inexpensive sharpening methods. And then I want to show you this. This is one of the first things I did to sharpen my gouges. I just simply took a block of hardwood and cut a groove with the gouge. Charged it with polishing compound. I turn it up on the back stroke, lay it down on the front stroke. You'll want some slips. Slips are tools that you use like in the inside to make that slight bevel that I talked about. And I just carved with this tool, charge it with the polishing compound, and now I have a slip. Dowels of different sizes. Charge it with polishing compound. And now you have a slip for the inside to polish it up. If it's a V tool, cut a V. Cut a V groove. Anyway, that one works for number 9s. I could make it wider for wider tools. This will do tools that are skinnier too. Right now it works well for a 10mm wide, but I could make the groove even wider and it would be better. But I can do 10 and under on this. If I need other shapes, I can just cut another groove in this piece of hardwood. You might want some kind of reference line to follow. And now I have one for number 7s. I would fine tune this a little bit. This is a little rough, but I wanted to give you the idea without taking a real long time in the video. This wouldn't have to be done with a back saw. It could be done with almost any saw. If you do have a table saw, you can just run a groove down with the table saw. Any block of hardwood. Probably a tighter grain would be better. Maple, birch. And beginning carvers understand the difference between hardwood and softwood. So many people don't understand how they're classified. And I don't know why they do it like this, but they do. Softwoods come from conifers, cone-bearing trees, pines, and hardwoods come from deciduous trees. It doesn't have anything to do with the texture or density of the wood. I had a laugh the other day. I was going through the TV and there was a home improvement show on, and the guy was saving the people all kinds of money by using reclaimed old growth pine, which is a fallacy all on its own. Saving money with reclaimed lumber, that just doesn't work. It's so labor intensive to get the reclaimed lumber. You're not going to save any money unless you're doing it yourself and you're not taking money out of pocket. But anyway, he said because it was old growth pine, it was classified as a hardwood. Not the case. Hardwoods are deciduous trees, softwoods are conifers. Basswood is a favorite carving wood for most carvers, and it's a deciduous tree, so it's classified as a hardwood, even though it's soft in nature. But anyway, those are a couple really inexpensive ways to get you sharpening until you can afford to buy more expensive stones and gadgets and gizmos. I'm not real big on the gadgets and gizmos. I like water stones a lot, and they produce a really, really nice edge. I still do sometimes use just the sandpaper, the wet dry paper, and a piece of glass. I have some slips that I use, but stropping, making a strop, I think you can buy them as well. But if you have a shoemaker around, maybe you can get a piece of leather from him. Like I said, this whole box of leather was at Joann Fabrics, leather scraps for like $5. A paint paddle to glue the strop to glue the leather to. You can make a disc to put in your drill motor, or if you have a drill press, then you have a power strop without going out and buying something really expensive. But this will help you get sharpening. Anyway, hope that helped. Thanks so much for listening. And if you do like this, let me know. Give me suggestions. I hope it's helping out. Thanks. Have fun.